Good morning, everyone. I am your host, Eldridge Alexander, and I want to welcome to V.O.I.C.E.S Randomish. We have a special episode this morning. I'm happy to be here with my sisters who are going to share what it's like to be Black, female, Muslim, and American. So before we open a dialogue, I really want to invite you to subscribe to this channel, comment, share with your friends, and like us on Facebook and Instagram. With that being said, welcome, sisters, this morning. Thank you so much for being here in this dialogue. I really appreciate the fact that you got up early so that you can have an opportunity to share your voice. So I'm going to have you guys, you ladies, introduce yourselves, starting with my sister up in the left-hand corner, Angela.
Hi, Angela Pennenberg. Not sure what you mean by introduce myself, but I'm an American Muslim woman, not Black. I am married to a Black man. Been living as an American Muslim for about 7 or 8 years now. It's the best thing in my life. That's it.
Do you have children, Angela?
I do. I have 4 children, and I have 2 grandchildren, 1 on the way.
Okay. So are all of your children with you and your husband, or are your children products of different relationships or marriages? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. I was married to a white man before I became Muslim. So I have, my 4 children are from that marriage. That father of those children is not really involved in their life right now. So for the last almost 10 years, my husband has been the father figure in my children's life. He is I'm raising my oldest grandchild, and he is definitely her daddy. That he is, she calls him daddy regardless of the fact that we call him granddaddy. She just calls him daddy. She calls me mama, even though I'm grandma. But yeah, we're raising these kids together. So my husband is raising 4 white children. Well, not, my oldest is 21. So he's raising 3 white children and our white granddaughter.
That's a different perspective, and I don't think that people actually thought about the fact that a man of color, Black man, no matter what his heritage is, will be in this position of being the father figure to white kids. We always see it as the reverse. As a woman who's not a woman of color, what are some of the things that you share with your sisters in raising your children, regardless of their color, that you've seen your sisters also share? The good, the bad, whether it's a challenge. I'd like to hear that.
Well, oftentimes in the Muslim community, there are many different cultures that come together. So Egyptian, Pakistani, all over, African, everywhere. So a lot of times I think when we come together with our children, there is that cultural norm that we bring with, that oftentimes we hold other people to our norm without knowing that, or not knowing, but without holding space for the fact that our norms may not be other people's norms. So me as a privileged woman, Lona and I were talking the other day about the fact that if I take off my hijab, I am as privileged as I can get as a female in the world. So I understand that as that privileged woman, with all I have to do is this. And I understand that with that comes a responsibility to use that privilege in a positive way that sometimes is not going to help me out, but hopefully will help somebody else out. And that's part of that when we bring our children together and we're teaching them about cultural norms and we're teaching them about those things. My place is to remain quiet sometimes, is to model listening and silence instead of what I can, my privilege allows me to stand in front whenever I want. and sometimes I shouldn't be in front. So right now, I shouldn't be in front. And yeah, I mean, that's a struggle on many layers, on many levels, when there isn't this spotlight on privilege and Black Lives Matter. There still is privilege, and Black lives still matter. So that gets modeled in everyday conversations, in you know, letting our children play together, letting what you would do in your house be what you do in your house, and not affect how I think of you or how I react to you. So I think we share that. Oftentimes I just want to be quiet and listen. And I think that my sisters have been told that they have to do that for the longest time. And wow. And it's not lost on me that I have the privilege to choose to stand in front or be quiet. And no one's gonna knock me down, even though I have hijab on, even though, you know, this kind of takes a little bit of my skin tone away. It doesn't remove it. So, you know, for that matter, I don't go through a lot of what my sisters go through. And I'm really aware of that, and trying to not put it on their shoulders to educate myself, but to educate my children and myself, my community, my family. So the power of privilege does not have to be something that I am ashamed of if I use it correctly. So me being ashamed and, oh, I'm so sorry what happened, only puts me in another place where my sister has to comfort me for no reason. So, you know, I'm hoping that if my voice is at all heard, it's heard within my community of white people, where I can say we have work to do. We don't have to put it on anyone else's shoulders, because the information's out there. We can get it already. And yeah, so that's where I feel like my place is in all of this. So I feel like I've already said a whole lot.
Okay, you made some very good points. I really thank you for that. You said some really good things, and I'm gonna come back to those. So I really want to thank you for sharing that, Angela. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna go over here to Nasra. Let me unmute you. I think you should be able to unmute yourself. Go ahead and take yourself. Oh, you're good. Go ahead. Good morning.
Good morning, Nasra Mahmoud. I don't know what I can say about myself. I have 2 kids. I used to live in Minnesota for 12 years. I mean, I lived in Minnesota for 12 years. I was not born here. I was not born in the United States. I came to the United States as a refugee. I'm originally born in Somalia. I don't really know what else to say.
Tell me, like you said, that one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk to you is because we had some good conversation a while back about Minnesota. And I have to tell you that me, like a lot of people, might be totally outraged and shocked by what's going on in Minnesota, because they did such a really good job of hiding everything that's going on in Minnesota. What was it like for you, having watched what you saw happen in Minnesota, having been a resident there, and being in Wisconsin now, kind of looking back at the place that you came as a refugee that was supposed to be something that was a place to sort of be a solace, a safe place for you. So what was that like to actually see a real true depiction of what Minnesota, or Minneapolis itself, is really like, and what you guys have been living under all this time?
I think I'm glad when I first came to the United States that I didn't live in Minnesota. When I first came to the United States, I live in the state of Georgia, and the community that I live, majority of the people, 95% of the people were either African American or immigrant. The places that I worked, my supervisor, people next to me, people below me, everybody was, you know, what you call a marginalized community. So I never felt out of place when I used to ride the public transportation. So when I just kind of riding the train or the bus, people just treated me, even when they say hello to me, it wasn't, hey, hello, how are you? It was like, how you doing, sister? So going from that to coming to a Midwestern state, it was really a culture shock for me, because I came from a place, first coming to United States and leaving my home, and then coming to a place where people kind of accepted me as just one of them, to moving to Minnesota and now feeling like for the first time experiencing what racism is. It was hard, and it still is hard. When this whole situation happened, none of them really surprised me. I've always said to myself when I lived there, I felt that the community that I lived, and I lived in a small town to make it even worse. Because if you compare the community that I lived in Minnesota versus Minneapolis, Minneapolis is nothing compared to where I lived for the last 12 years. It felt like everybody in that town, it felt like they signed a contract, and the contract was to treat people that look like me like we were not human beings. You couldn't escape racism, not even a day. If I go for a walk, I will hear multiple times cars going by saying to me, go back to your country. So a lot of the things that took place didn't shock me, but I thought, you know, sometimes you deal with things and you think you're over it,
Yeah.
until you see that a lot of the things that took place was really, really triggering for me. And it was really hard for me. It almost like going through that experience all over again.
Yes.
And so I still sometimes think about it, and I feel like part of me is kind of like I have my eyes on everything that's taking place over there. I'm constantly watching, talking to, I still have a lot of family that still live there. And so I'm talking to them. I'm just hoping at the end of all of these things.
It's okay.
I'm hoping that at the end of all of this, that there is really a real change, because living in Minnesota was, I don't know. I couldn't go to the grocery store and shop peacefully. Like, it really was that bad. I mean, I remember just being in the checkout line, and the lady that's supposed to check my items was banging the bell, telling me to put my stuff. And she must assumed, the thing is that like I'm a Black person, and then on top of that, I'm Muslim, and all of that is something you can see when you look at me. And so to add to that was I'm an immigrant. So people would just kind of, when they see me, it's like, okay, she doesn't know her rights. She is an immigrant, so she can't really defend herself because she doesn't know her rights. So I felt like a lot of places that I went, like that just became like a normal.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up, where I was born, there was a civil war. So, the first time you hear a gunshot and all of those things, it's scary. But after you live in that condition for a long time, you become accustomed to all of that, and it becomes normal to you. And so when I lived there, a lot of the racism and a lot of things that I've seen that were really awful, it became like a normal to me until I left Minnesota and I came to Wisconsin. And I've always categorized, I've always said to myself, like, the difference between Wisconsin and Minnesota is that people that are racist people in Minnesota will let you know how racist they are, versus, place like here, people can be a racist, but I feel like there's this environment where like you can be racist when you're among your family and your friends, but like outside in public places, people don't really display that a lot here. Well, over there, they will like, I would go shopping at like, let's say a grocery store, and people will say, speak English. Like, just, I'm minding my own business. I would have security people follow me around, like I'm stealing something. I'm just doing everyday thing. Where like over here, like people are scared. They can be just as racist as them, but like they're not open. Like they don't approach me and say things like that to me. Or like people in Minnesota, they were just, I mean, I remember being treated really bad at the grocery store, and I looked to the people behind me, hoping that someone will come to my rescue, only to discover people behind me were laughing. So I'm not surprised, not shocked at all what is taking place in Minnesota. And, you know, I've always felt that at some point that is going to explode, because when you live in that condition on daily basis, at some point, I mean, people are going to explode, because it's just, you know, you just feel like, you know, every day you get slapped in the face and you turn the other cheek, and like the other cheek gets slapped. And so you got nowhere. Like at some point it's going to explode. And I feel like that's exactly what had happened.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm going to tell you why. Is because the type of persecution that you've expressed is no different than what we all, as when we're not wearing the hijab with this color on. We'll talk about that in a moment. I'm going to go to Lona and have her share just how it has been for her, because I know that every story here is important. Every story is different. And then we all have some commonalities. So Lona, thank you for being here this morning and being open and sharing. Go ahead. I'm gonna take you off mute.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm always excited and willing to share my story, especially being an African American Muslim woman. I've been Muslim for about almost 7 years now. I'm originally from Chicago, and like how Nasro talked about living in Atlanta, how you don't really experience racism. Coming from Chicago, a very diverse community, you know that you're African American, you know that you're Black, but it's not something that you're reminded of, because no matter where you go, you're accepted. It's like Black, white, orange, pink, people accept you. And so you know racism exists, but you don't experience it. And I never in my life experienced or felt like the color of my skin was an issue until I moved here to Appleton. And it was a shock. Like, you know it exists, but you don't know it exists because you didn't come from it. You just assume that, oh yeah, that was in the 60s and everybody loves each other, and you know, and then you come here and it's a reality. Like, no, you're African American woman. You really don't belong here, but we're gonna like tolerate you, but we don't have to tolerate you. And then adding hijab to that just makes it a little worse. I remember my first year in hijab, maybe second, I was in Walmart, and I was actually on the phone at the time talking to my husband. I was doing some shopping, and this lady, she walks up behind me and she says to her friend, I wish they would go back to their country. And I turned around and I said, well, what country is that? Because I don't think she thought I heard her. And then she was just like shocked and she didn't see anything. And that was the first time that I knew that, oh, wow, it's like triple trouble for me. I'm Black, I'm a woman, I'm Muslim, you know, and now people feel like, oh, she's Black, she's Muslim, she's not from this country. So you have that because they naturally assume that I'm an immigrant. Because they'll ask, well, what country are you from? Well, the last time I checked, I was born in Chicago in the United States, you know? And then that's always a shock for them. Or like little things, like, for example, the grocery store, like Nasro said, you'll go in the grocery store and sometimes people can be really nice and sometimes people can be really mean. You know, they just assume that you're a mean person or assume that you're a terrorist. And it is like, I'm not. Sit down, have a conversation with me. You know, let's talk, let's learn each other. Don't be afraid of something you don't know.
Mhm.
And that's hard because we have to take precaution, but we're not the one that's doing the things. Like I have to look over my shoulder. I have to, if I decide to take a bike ride, like, okay, do I wear my hijab this way? Do I wear it this way? How do I make myself not stand out? And how do I make myself safe? And how do I not burden my husband? Like, okay, you have to go ride with me because what if somebody get out their car and like push you off the bike? You know, and we shouldn't have to think about those things. We should not live in fear of something as small as a traffic stop. I got pulled over coming from the outlet mall, and the officer had his gun out. And I'm just like, why? He's like, well, you're going 75 and it's 70. Okay, I understand that. Why do you have your gun? Well, because you didn't pull over right away. You just turned your lights on. I pulled over when you turned your lights on. So it's like things like that. You know, people see the hijab and naturally think that you are a threat. And no matter how much you want to be quiet about it, it exists. And people don't understand it hurts, you know, because at the end of the day, we're still people. We still have feelings. You know, we still bleed the same way you bleed. We still cry the same way you cry. Um, and people need to be just have a little bit more like compassionate, like just don't assume. And it's hard, even right down to looking for jobs. You have to think about the places you fill out an application at. Do you want to be exposed to the public? Do you want to make yourself that vulnerable? You know, do you want to work at this company? Everybody says, oh, we're diverse and we don't tolerate racism. That's just on paper to make you
Mhm.
look good. But
Mhm.
underneath, you do. I couldn't tell you how many interviews I've been on where the phone interviews are amazing. And I get there and you have on hijab and the whole tone is different. It's like, where's that lady I was speaking to on the phone? That was like amazing and couldn't wait to meet me. And I get there and it's like, oh, okay. You know, and then it's, well, I'll call you. And you never get that call, or they leave you sitting like, oh, I had a phone call that came through. I need to take this call, and they never come back out, and they send a
Mhm.
secretary
Mhm.
phone up, you know, and you know instantly it's because of my hijab. They can deal with my color, they can tolerate that a little bit, but the hijab, they're not going to tolerate. But they can't say that, you know, so it's hard. And then with all the riots and the George Floyd, it's like making
Amplified
people,
everything. It amplifies it.
it does. And it's like, do you be quiet or do you speak out? You know, is it going to change? It hasn't changed in all these years. What's going to change now? You know, it's very sad. Then when you're married to a black man and you talk to your husband the whole time he's riding to work because you're afraid. And it's like, babe, you got your seatbelt on. Did you pull your driver's license out and put your driver's license and your insurance card on the seat or on the dashboard?
Mhm.
You shouldn't have to do that. Like, we're having conversations about, okay, we need to go to Best Buy and see how much it costs to get cameras installed in your vehicle. Why am I having this conversation with my husband? Why am I calling my sons from another mother? Like, what are you all doing? Where are you at? Are you with the crowd? Don't drive down dark roads. If you get pulled over and no one's around, put your flashes on. You can legally do that and drive 5 miles an hour until you get to a place where you feel safe. Why are we having these conversations with our kids and our husbands? Why? That we shouldn't have to do that.
You're right. I'm going to leave it right here, and I want to show you a clip from another group of sisters who's actually talk about the same thing. But one of the things that actually is happening in America that really scares me is the desensitization of the value of human life when it comes to be people of color. And I mean that because of the fact that I don't even know how we as people of color got through the video of George Floyd's killing so soon after watching Ahmaud Arbery and in between watching Amy Cooper in the park knowingly set somebody of color up to possibly be murdered. See, I've been telling people for a long time that racism in this country is conscious. It is a choice. It is learned. And a lot of my constituents laughed at me and said, oh, Eldridge, that's not true. And I was like, it is. And she was my proof. Because how can you stand that quiet, that articulate in the park to say, I am going to give a death sentence to someone possibly because that person is an African-American man sitting in the park, bird watching. See, that's the level of desensitization that we got, and that's the level of teaching that is going on, like you said, in the privacy of people's homes, where it's not necessarily overt. They're not using the N-word, but they're telling their kids whether or not we're human by the things that they're telling us they can and can say to us and can and cannot do to us. There's a couple of things there. Nasro, you talked about this feeling about like you felt like you was reliving it all over again. I was born in 1958. I can't tell you how this has impacted me and plenty of people that I know that are my age. A lot of times the people of my generation are being seen as we didn't really do anything. There's a lot that we've done. The unfortunate thing is that people who look like us still continue to persecute people who look like us. Because the chances are that sometimes when you go into the store, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's people who look like you in the same shade that have taken on the same ideologies and spew the same garbage to you because they don't see you as a human because you've been painted that way. Everything that you get desensitizes you. The other piece that I want to just bring up is being different. I think that there has been a concerted effort made through every media text, through every commercial, through every piece of clothing, every single thing that they do to paint difference. Now, while I understand that we need to be able to value and appreciate differences, I don't think that people are there yet because otherwise we would not be walking around with PTSD on high alert. We on high alert. I'm in corporate America. You guys are in corporate America. You know what it's like. You sitting there, you gritting your teeth, you holding back tears, and every interaction that you do with people that don't look like us. Because why? We still trying to stay alive. Like you said, you're talking your kids down, you're talking your husband down, and it's a lot of stress to have to go out of the house. And Lona and I happen to work in the same place. And I remember when she came to the place that we were working, and I was the only person of color. And I can tell you that having people come into those classes, I didn't care what entry level they were, to have people to come into classes that didn't say things to me like, oh, well, you speak so well for her, and then they stop themselves. So even though I don't have a hijab on, I know I'm different every time I go into any interaction with people who don't look like me. And sometimes people who look like me make a concerted effort to make me not forget that I'm one of them. Like they'll get upset because you do speak a certain way. So let me just segue to this particular video, because the hijab is not necessarily the only thing that we have to worry about, especially when we have us, not really understanding us because we put on a different hat. That'd be like me persecuting somebody because they wear the baseball cap or a Kango. Big deal, that's your choice. So let's just take a look at this video right here. I'm gonna share my screen with you. I have a video queued up. And I just want to share this with you, and then we'll talk about a few other things, and then we'll decide when we're going to carry on our conversation a little bit further. All right, so this is on Being Black, Muslim, and American Proud, Yasmin, and this was from October 24th of 2017. So that gives you an idea when someone last really had the courage or focused on what it likes to be from your perspective of being Black, female, Muslim, American.
I'm Yasmin. I do many things. I style, I write, and I offer creative direction to designers. Being a Black American Muslim is about knowing and being clear about the fact that I am unapologetically Muslim, undeniably American, and unstoppably Black. In this backdrop of crazy alt-right neo-Nazism, you resist in so many ways, one of which is show up. show up with your scarf every day if you're Muslim. If you want to wear your hijab, show up and resist by expressing yourself authentically with pride, and also resist economically. I work with everyone, but when it's time to buy, I buy within my communities. I buy Black, I buy Muslim, I buy from female designers, what have you. So I'm helping an international economy of Black women. That for me is one of the ways that I resist.
So she talked about using her creativity, who she is as an artist, and her financial ability to resist. How are you resisting right now? What steps are you ladies taking to resist? And you take yourself off mute and speak whatever moves you. Go ahead. Doesn't matter who goes first.
As far as myself resisting, I am trying to buy more within the African American communities, supporting small business people, because as she stated, we have to help our community grow financially. We need to be strong and depend on each other, and not always expect a discount because it's Black owned. I'm even I've developed a cream that I've made for African American women and men. And it's like, if we can start developing products for ourselves and buying from ourselves, the Black dollar goes a long way. We shop. I mean, right now, no matter what your financial level is, it's been proven and study shows that the African American communities spend money we don't have. And if we can own more things in our community and keep that money within our community, we can be so powerful. If we had Black Wall Street at one point in time, why can't we come together and do that again? Why can't we uplift each other? So that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to buy within my community, support the Black-owned business within this community, and become a Black-owned business so I can, supply my community with demands, and be not only just supporting the Black community, the Muslim community. It's nice to walk in the store and it's Muslim owned, because you all share something in common, not only your race, but your religion. And that means so much to shop from a person that looks like you and it's not going to follow you around the store or just assume negative things about you. So we all have to be part of that change. We all have to, whether it's buying Black, starting a business, supporting small business people, we have to be part of that. So yeah, I'm definitely trying to support my entrepreneurs a lot more than I've done before, because it's much needed.
One of the hazards that we ran into, of course, being born when I was born, I saw Black pride, I saw Black power. The one thing is that white people are afraid of Black power because they don't understand Black power. Black power is exactly what they have. It's economic ability to support and sustain yourself. It's the ability to be able to make choices about how you spend your money, with whom you spend your money, what you produce, how you sell it, and those types of things. And really, I can tell you guys that that's what the fear is of white America is that we are going to go back and we are going to have a Black Wall Street, but that Black Wall Street won't only be in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that it will be all over the world, all over the United States. And then the road to self-sufficiency leaves other people out who make their money on the backs of people who are impoverished and poor. See, if you have people being self-sufficient, then you don't need all of these programs that people will go to and beg for handouts. And I said this post the other day. James Brown said, I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Just open up the door and I'll get it myself. Now, when we get in these doors, we're not talking about open up the door and then I'm just going to come in there and sit with a handout. No, when we're talking about opening up the doors, what we're talking about is in corporate America. If I'm qualified for the position, why is it that you are continuously overlooking me, or you'll bring me in for window dressing, but I'm at the lowest level on the rung and I'm more qualified than people 8, 9 steps above me? And now you're asking me to coach those people on how to be better leaders. But you're not going to compensate me either in monetary form, or you're not going to compensate me in even having me have the exposure, the reward, the recognition. Those are the systemic barriers that we all face right now. You guys are fighting the same barriers outside corporate America that we're fighting inside corporate America, because corporate and everybody understands that the way that people become less dependent upon a system is by becoming producers of goods and services that they barter or exchange. Because like you said, sometimes, Lona, it's not about the dollars and cents. Maybe I do hair care products, maybe someone else sews, maybe someone else is a good cook. And I think that it's not about the money, it's about the relationships that we need to build within our communities that help us to trust one another and understand that we're doing the best things in the best interest of our community. Because the worst thing that happened was a thing called assimilation. And when you take down Jim Crow and you say, you can come to my bathroom, you can come to drink at my fountain, then we start to think that we okay to eat at the table. When in fact, the meal that's being served to us at the table is substandard. It is not nourishing our bodies and minds and helping to equip us the way that we need so that we can actually build economic wealth for our families down the line. Because anytime you don't have a bank account, anytime you redline and you can't bear property, and anytime you have a business and you have to underinsure yourself so that you can actually be able to do business in the neighborhood, those are all systemic barriers that keep us dependent upon a governmental system that has dehumanized us, demoralized, and continues to depict us as animals. And they can justify shooting and killing us in the street, whether we're 6 months old or 66 years old. It doesn't matter. So I like what you said, you ladies are saying in general about the fact that, yeah, it starts at home with our families, teaching our kids that we need to be respectful of one another, because that's where it starts. If I see the lady next door and my kids are being disruly or disrespectful to her and I don't say anything. The other thing that they did is they took the penal and the legal system and they allowed it to be used to reprimand and discipline our children. So therefore, if I give the government more power in the legal penal system, more power in my household, what does that say to me as a child about my parents? So it's a whole lot of layers of things that's undermining us, and it's all done in the name of, because those people are darker in race, because they're females, because they practice the Muslim religion, because they're poor, because they may not have a certain education, because they're an immigrant, they're not human. What would you say to those people out there, specifically since you have children? What do you really want them to know about who you are as Muslim women, what your purpose is, and what they should really understand about what it is to be Black, female, Muslim, immigrant, disenfranchised, all those different things in America? Where do we want to leave people with, Nasro? You can take yourself off, you on mute.
Well, I used to go out of my way and talk to people. I'm a quiet person when I'm new to people, and I keep it to myself. But I sometimes initiate conversation even though it's uncomfortable for me, because I don't want people to have to just look at me and have a preconceived notion about me. I try to educate my kids about who they are, and they're too young right now to talk about certain things, but I want to advocate for them, and I want to make sure that the school that they go, that they're not treated any different than anybody else. I have a 7-year-old son that was being bullied at school, and every time an incident happened with a particular child, the school would say, oh, this child was not paying attention, oh, he did this, or my son felt scared that he was going to be punished by saying this person did this to me. And so after multiple times of those type of incidents taking place, I decided to go to the school, physically meet with the principal and say, listen, when does it become a problem? The first time, the second time, the third time, like give me a number, because you can't just constantly assume that this child is not being targeted when it happens over and over and over, and each time, you know, I don't blame the teachers because they have 20-something children that they're dealing with. And so I want to educate my children when they reach an age in which they can understand that they're gonna be treated differently based on the way they look. At the end of the day, I'm a human being just like everybody else. I'm not looking to be treated in a special way or any different. All I want is to be treated just like everybody else. That's all.
I muted myself because I wanted to tell you to go.
Who, me?
Yeah, you go ahead, Angela.
Okay. Well, you know, as I listen to my sisters, who I love deeply, and I listen to how that affects their daily life, I've never had to tell my children behave. I never had to tell them if someone is acting inappropriately around you and to you, that you should calm down, that you should, you know, take a back seat, remove yourself, keep yourself safe. You know, I don't know all the conversation because I've never had to have it with my boys or girls. I have 2 girls and 2 boys. However, I did have a situation where my daughter was being bullied. She is autistic, where I had to go to school and talk to them, but I have never had to fight an administration to just have my child be seen as human. And that I see, if Allah has given me the understanding that this is happening, even though I don't live it, that this is happening, then I also have the responsibility that when my people are speaking about that kid in class that keeps acting up, that they have no actual example of acting up other that seems out of the norm for me, other than he's Black, other than he's different in some way. So, and usually that's skin tone. My father is someone who wears a Black Lives Matter pin. He wears it everywhere he goes. And he and I have a lot of conversations about what happens when you wear that pin and go out in the world as a white man. And he has, this is how I know that this is so extreme, because he has been told that he can't sit at a table simply for wearing the pin. So I know that my brothers and sisters are deeply scarred, are generationally injured, hurt, disrespected. So if I know this, then in my conversations, I have to be real that I was raised in a racist family. I was raised by racist people who didn't have a problem saying the N-word in my home, not in public. So the ladies are right. It doesn't happen out in the world, because then you'll, you know, it's come to the point where you can't say that openly out in the world. So to protect ourselves, we just say it in our homes. And because of that, it continues. Because of that, my kids would learn, if I said that in my home, if I carried this with me, my kids would learn so easily, because I learned so easily to devalue, to not look at certain people who look different than me. It doesn't, you know, anyone non-white, my family could say something about any kind of slur they could use, and it wasn't questioned. No one said, hey, wait a minute, what do you mean? I don't get that. And it has to stop somewhere. So it has to, and I have to be real with the reality that I was taught how to be racist. I was taught, and it's there. And so I have to make a conscious effort. I have to, because that's not, as a Muslim, as anyone who believes in a higher power, there has never been a religion or an organized brethren or whatever that says, yeah, we have the power to judge. And you know, there's never been any of that. A higher power means that we have nothing. We're nothing down here. All of us. The higher power is the big thing. And when we as white people act as if we have something that isn't given to us, it's not ours to have. I have to stand against that if I believe otherwise. So as my father goes around with his Black Lives Matter pin and starts conversations that people come and they say, what does that mean? What are you wearing that pin for? He is bringing to me that example of racism that has to happen within my community. It has to happen. I have to be very blunt about the fact that I am a white woman raised in a racist family that has racist ideas, because how would I not if that's what I was told? So I don't get to say I'm not racist, because I am, but I have to say I'm racist, and I'm working on not being racist, not giving it to my kids, not putting it on my children, not continuing it. So I mean, all I can do is continue to educate my children on what actually happens, because I wasn't told in school. My racial education, race relation education, started and stopped at Martin Luther King. It wasn't all these other small steps toward something. It was, this man came out and said race should not be an issue. He said all these wonderful things. He got killed, but in the process, it was fixed. Race was fixed. And every Black person who keeps talking about it just wants it to continue. Just wants to continue to feel like a victim. This was the narrative within my school, within my family. So that's not okay. My school system, I never saw a Black person, never, until I was in high school, never. And then it was like a handful of Black people. And it's not, it shouldn't be taught because there's Black people around. Do you understand what I'm saying? Race should be actual racial history.
Yes.
It should be taught because a Black person came along and said, that's not true. You need to teach the actual history. Racism has to stop within the white community for it to stop within the world.